Imagine a stone book in which the secrets of millennia are encrypted. Chartres Cathedral in France is not just a Gothic temple, but a mysterious encyclopedia of ancient knowledge. Built on the site of a druid sanctuary, it holds secrets that baffle even modern scientists. Pagan symbols among Christian shrines, a labyrinth with mathematical precision of the planets, stained glass windows with alchemical formulas. What is hidden in the cathedral? Built by people who knew more than they should have known in the 13th century. Subscribe to our channel to learn more about the mysteries of history. And in the comments, write your opinion. Do you think that medieval masters possessed secret knowledge lost to modern civilization? Or can their achievements be explained by the high level of craftsmanship of that era? In the small French town of Chartres, 100 kilometers from Paris, stands one of the most mysterious temples in the Christian world. Notre Dame de Chartres is not just a cathedral. It is a stone encyclopedia of secret knowledge, built on land that was considered sacred long before the advent of Christianity. Archaeological research shows that people worshipped gods here as early as the Neolithic era, more than 4,000 years ago. The Gallic tribes of the Carnutes, who gave the Chartres region its name, founded one of the most important sanctuaries of ancient Gaul here. But why did this place attract people for centuries? Like a magnet. The Druids did not choose the locations for their sacred groves by chance. They sensed the special energy flows of the Earth, which modern science calls geomagnetic anomalies. The hill on which Chartres Cathedral stands is located at the intersection of underground water flows and has unique geophysical characteristics. Roman chroniclers mention that Chartres was home to a sanctuary of the Virgin Mother, where a wooden statue of the goddess of fertility was kept. The local Gauls called her the Virgin who will give birth. Surprisingly, isn't this a foreshadowing of the Christian cult of the Virgin Mary? The first Christians appeared here in the 1st century AD. Legend has it that St. Potentius brought the news of Christ here and founded the first Christian community. The pagan sanctuary gradually transformed into a Christian temple, but the ancient traditions did not disappear. They dissolved into the new faith, creating an amazing synthesis. By the 4th century, the first Christian basilica stood on the site of the Druid sanctuary. It was replaced by 4 more temples, each built on the foundation of the previous one. It was as if each generation sought to get closer to heaven without losing touch with its ancient roots. In the 9th century, Emperor Charles the Bald presented the cathedral with the greatest relic, the veil of the Virgin Mary, which, according to legend, she wore during the Annunciation. This shrine turned Chartres into one of the most important centers of Marian worship in Europe. Thousands of pilgrims flocked here, but were they seeking only Christian relics? Or were they drawn by the more ancient power of this place? The 10th century brought new trials. The Normans ravaged the city twice, but the cathedral was rebuilt each time. In 1113, a fire almost completely destroyed the Romanesque building. It seemed that the sacred place was lost forever. However, it was this catastrophe that paved the way for the creation of the greatest Gothic masterpiece. The crypt of the surviving Romanesque cathedral became the foundation for the new temple. Its walls preserve traces of even more ancient buildings, dating back to the Gallo-Roman era. Descending into the crypt, visitors feel a special atmosphere. Here, time seems to stand still, and the boundaries between the Christian and pagan past dissolve. What made people return to this place for centuries and build a new temple on the ruins of the old one each time? The answer to this question lies not only in history, but also in the very architecture of the cathedral, which began to be built in the early 13th century. On the morning of June 10, 1214, the residents of Chartres woke up to the smell of smoke. Their beloved cathedral was burning like a giant bonfire. The Romanesque basilica, which had been under construction for more than a century, was turning to ashes before the eyes of the shocked townspeople. But sometimes, destruction is the beginning of the greatest creation. When the flames died down, it seemed that everything was lost forever. However, a miracle occurred in the ruins. The holy relic, the veil of the Virgin Mary, remained intact. The clergy declared this a sign that the Virgin Mary wanted a new, even more beautiful home. And so began the construction that changed the history of architecture. Bishop Renaud de Mousson announced a fundraising campaign for the construction of a new temple. Gold flowed like a river. Kings and peasants, merchants and craftsmen all made donations. King Philip Augustus personally contributed a huge sum, and the English monarch Henry III, despite the war with France, also sent a generous donation. It was as if the entire Christian world had united for one great cause. But money was only the beginning. Craftsmen were needed who were capable of realizing this bold plan. The best architects in Europe gathered in Chartres. The name of the chief architect has not been preserved by history, but his genius is forever immortalized in stone. Contemporaries called such masters magistri, learned builders who possessed secret knowledge of geometry and engineering. Construction began with the crypt, an underground temple that became the foundation for the entire structure. The masters preserved the Romanesque crypt of the previous cathedral, but expanded it significantly. Why did they attach such importance to the underground part of the temple? The answer lies in an ancient tradition. The crypt symbolized the womb from which new life is born. The uniqueness of Chartres Cathedral lay in the fact that it was built as a single whole, rather than in parts, as was customary. In just 26 years, from 1213 to 1239, a Gothic marvel was created, striking in its harmony and perfect proportions. The masters used a revolutionary framework system. Massive Romanesque walls were replaced by slender columns and ribbed vaults. This made it possible to significantly increase the height of the building and cut huge windows into the walls. But how did 13th century builders calculate the loads with such precision that the building has stood for 800 years? The key to understanding lies in the application of sacred geometry. Every element of the cathedral is subject to strict mathematical proportions based on the golden ratio and the squaring of the circle. The masters used ancient knowledge passed down from teacher to student in building lodges. These secret traditions dated back to ancient architects and, possibly, to the priests of ancient temples themselves. The construction work became a religious feat for the entire population. Noble ladies and simple peasant women harnessed themselves to carts with stones alongside oxen. Craftsmen worked for free, considering it a sacred duty. What force could compel people to give their last savings and work to exhaustion for the sake of the temple? Masons carved blocks in the quarries of Berchy, 7 kilometers from the city. Each stone had its own mark, the signature of the craftsman who created it. These marks can still be seen in the walls of the cathedral. They form a secret script of medieval builders, a language understood only by the initiated. But the most amazing secrets of Chartres Cathedral are hidden not in its walls, but in the very layout of the building. At first glance, It is an ordinary cruciform temple, but a closer look reveals striking features of the layout that open the way to understanding the knowledge encrypted in stone. In the center of the nave of Chartres Cathedral, exactly 152 meters from the main altar, there is an amazing pattern laid out in black and white stone. It is a labyrinth with a diameter of 12 meters and 94 centimeters, one of the greatest mysteries of Gothic architecture. What made the builders of the 13th century place a pagan symbol in the very heart of a Christian temple? The labyrinth appeared in Chartres at the same time as the Gothic cathedral, in the first quarter of the 13th century. It is not a random decoration, but an essential element of the temple's sacred program. Its strict geometric proportions are linked to the overall architecture of the cathedral by mathematical ratios, which contemporaries called the music of the spheres. The path of the labyrinth is 261 meters long, almost a quarter of a kilometer of winding paths leading from the entrance to the central rosette. A person walking along it changes direction 113 times, following 11 concentric circles. But why these numbers, and what do they symbolize? Medieval pilgrims called the labyrinth the way to Jerusalem. Those who could not make a real pilgrimage to the Holy Land walked the labyrinth on their knees, reciting prayers. Each turn represented a spiritual trial, each circle a new stage of purification of the soul. The center of the labyrinth symbolized the heavenly Jerusalem, the goal of all Christian aspirations. However, the roots of labyrinth symbolism go back to pre-Christian times. Labyrinths are found in cultures on all continents, from Scandinavia to Peru, from Egypt to India. It is one of the oldest archetypes of humanity, symbolizing the soul's path through trials to enlightenment. Did the builders of Chartres consciously use this pagan symbol? The geometry of the Chartres labyrinth is based on the number 11, the number of concentric circles. In Christian symbolism, 11 signifies transition, a state between the perfect numbers 10 and 12. It is the number of apostles after Judas's betrayal, but before Matthias's election. It is a symbol of incompleteness, of searching, of the spiritual path. The diameter of the labyrinth is exactly equal to the width of the cathedral's west rose window. If the rose is placed on the floor, it will perfectly cover the labyrinth. This geometric connection is not accidental. The rose symbolizes heavenly glory, and the labyrinth symbolizes the earthly path to it. The top and bottom, heaven and earth, are united in a single sacred formula. In the center of the labyrinth, there was originally a copper plate with an image of Theseus slaying the Minotaur. This detail finally reveals the pagan roots of the symbol. The ancient myth of the Cretan labyrinth was reinterpreted in a Christian key. Theseus became a symbol of Christ defeating death, and the Minotaur became the embodiment of evil. But why did Christian theologians turn to pagan mythology? During the French Revolution, the copper plate was melted down to make cannons, but its image has been preserved in ancient descriptions. In the 18th century, the labyrinth was called a dance floor. On Fridays, the canons of the cathedral performed a ritual dance on it, beating out the rhythm with a ball. This tradition dated back to ancient mystery rites and was secretly preserved for centuries. Measurements show surprising accuracy and proportions. If you add the diameter of the labyrinth to the height of the nave to the vault, you get the length of the entire cathedral. The labyrinth becomes the key to understanding the entire architectural harmony of the building. It contains the code according to which the entire temple is built. Modern researchers have discovered that by walking through the labyrinth, a person covers a distance equal to the climb up the cathedral's bell tower. The horizontal path on the ground is equivalent to vertical movement towards the sky. This ingenious architectural solution allowed each pilgrim to make a symbolic ascent without leaving the floor level. But the labyrinth holds even deeper secrets. Its geometry is connected not only with the architecture of the cathedral, but also with the movement of the heavenly bodies, which opens the way to understanding the astronomical knowledge of medieval masters. When the first rays of dawn penetrate the windows of Chartres Cathedral, a daily miracle of stone turning into light takes place. 176 stained glass windows with a total area of 2,600 square meters create a symphony of color that is unmatched in the world. But behind this beauty lies a complex system of symbols accessible only to the initiated. The stained glass windows of Chartres are not just decoration, but a stone Bible for the illiterate people of the Middle Ages. Each window tells a story, each color carries meaning, and every detail is thought out to the smallest detail. However, many of the scenes go far beyond official Christian teachings and open the way to esoteric knowledge. The secret of the unique radiance of Chartres' stained glass windows lies in a unique technology that was lost after the 14th century. Master glassmakers added gold and silver to the glass, creating a special optical effect. The blue color, known as Chartres blue, has not yet been reproduced using modern methods. Was this a chance discovery or the result of secret knowledge? 3 magnificent roses occupy the central place among the stained glass windows. The South Rose, presented by King Louis IX, depicts the apocalypse. In its center sits Christ in glory, surrounded by symbols of the evangelists and 24 elders. But a careful look reveals surprising details. Zodiac signs coexist with Christian saints, and ancient gods hide under the guise of allegorical figures. The North Rose window is dedicated to the Virgin Mary and dates back to 1230. Here, scenes from the Old and New Testaments are intertwined, but the composition is based on the laws of astrological charts. The 12 petals of the rose correspond to the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 apostles, and the 12 signs of the zodiac at the same time. Is this a coincidence or a conscious use of universal symbolism? The West Rose, known as the Rose of Judgment Day, depicts the Last Judgment. Its diameter is 13 meters and 20 centimeters, exactly the same as the floor labyrinth. In the center of the composition, Christ the Judge separates the righteous from the sinners, but around the circle are images dating back to ancient solar cults. The stained glass windows of the choir, donated by the city's craft guilds, are particularly noteworthy. Each guild commissioned a window reflecting its professional activities. This resulted in unique images of medieval technologies, from bread making to coin minting. But why are there scenes of clearly alchemical content among them? The stained glass window donated by the Masons Guild contains mysterious symbols that contemporaries interpret as alchemical formulas. It depicts craftsmen at work, but their tools and gestures resemble the actions of medieval alchemists. The square, compass, and plumb line had a dual meaning, professional and esoteric. The Guild's stained glass windows reveal the secret connections between crafts and the occult sciences. The apothecary's stained glass window depicts not only medicinal plants, but also symbols of the planets that govern their properties. The window of the coppersmith contains alchemical symbols of metals, and the stained glass window of the jewelers depicts the process of transforming base metals into precious ones. The most mysterious stained glass window is that of Saint James in the south transept. It depicts the pilgrim's journey to Compostela, but the symbolism of the window goes far beyond Christian pilgrimage. The Milky Way, guiding the pilgrims, is connected with the alchemical path of the transformation of the soul. The stained glass windows of Chartres encode the astronomical knowledge of the Middle Ages. The calendar scenes in the windows show not only agricultural work, but also the position of the stars in different months of the year. The signs of the zodiac are accompanied by symbols indicating the influence of the planets on human destiny. The color symbolism of the stained glass windows is also not accidental. Blue signifies divine wisdom and the heavenly sphere. Red symbolizes divine love and sacrifice. Yellow and gold symbolize divine light and glory. But in the alchemical tradition, these same colors denote the stages of the Great Division, the transformation of matter into spirit. Modern research has shown that the stained glass windows of Chartres create lighting effects in the interior of the cathedral that change throughout the day and year. At certain moments in the solar cycle, rays of light fall on specific parts of the altar or labyrinth, creating a unique light calendar. But how did medieval craftsmen calculate these effects with astronomical precision? Behind the external beauty of Chartres Cathedral lies a precise mathematical system that transforms the building into a three-dimensional model of the cosmos. Every dimension and every proportion is subject to strict geometric laws based on the sacred science of the Middle Ages. But where did the builders of the 13th century get the knowledge that official science only discovered during the Renaissance? The cathedral is 130 meters long. The transept is 46 meters and 80 centimeters wide, and the nave is 36 meters and 50 centimeters high. At first glance, these are ordinary numbers, but their ratios reveal an amazing system of proportions based on the golden ratio and the squaring of the circle. The golden ratio, which ancient mathematicians called the divine proportion, permeates the entire architecture of Chartres. The ratio of the length of the nave to its width, the height of the cathedral to its length, the diameter of the labyrinth to the distance between the columns. Everywhere the magic number 1.618 is repeated. But did medieval masters know the theory of the golden ratio, or were they guided by intuition? The answer can be found by studying the architectural treatises of that era. The masters called the golden ratio the extreme and mean ratio and considered it the key to divine harmony. They believed that God created the world according to the laws of geometry, and that architects must follow these laws in order to build a worthy dwelling for the Almighty. The cathedral's plan is based on a system of squares and circles inscribed within each other. The central square is defined by the intersection of the nave and transept. It is the heart of the temple, the place of the altar. From it, according to the laws of sacred geometry, the entire layout of the building develops. Each part of the cathedral is mathematically connected to the whole, creating architectural harmony similar to musical harmony. The height of the cathedral is not accidental. It is equal to the side of a square constructed on the diameter of the building's base. This proportion is called the quadrature of the circle, and was considered in the Middle Ages to be a symbol of the union of the earthly and the heavenly. The circle symbolized the sky and perfection, while the square symbolized the earth and the material world. Their geometric unity meant the harmony of all creation. The columns of the cathedral are not arranged randomly, but form a system of intersecting triangles and pentagrams. The pentagram was an ancient symbol of man. The 5 points corresponded to the head, arms, and legs. The inclusion of this symbol in the plan of the temple meant that the cathedral was created in the image of man. a macrocosm reflecting the microcosm of the human body. But the most amazing discoveries await those who study the numerical symbolism of the cathedral. The number of columns, windows, steps, and architectural details is subject to a strict system of sacred numbers: 3, 7, 12, 40. Each of these numbers had a deep symbolic meaning in Christian and pre-Christian traditions. The transept of the cathedral is oriented precisely according to the cardinal points, but with a slight deviation to the northeast. This is not a mistake by the builders, but a conscious decision. The altar is directed towards the point of sunrise on the feast day of the Nativity of the Virgin Mary. Thus, the architecture of the cathedral is connected with cosmic cycles and astronomical phenomena. The acoustic properties of the cathedral are also subject to mathematical laws. The proportions of the nave create a natural resonance that amplifies certain sound frequencies. Gregorian chants sound particularly soulful in Chartres. The architecture is tuned to the musical harmony of church modes. The cathedral's system of proportions is based on the medieval science of the harmony of the spheres. According to this doctrine, the planets emit musical sounds as they move, and their combination creates a cosmic symphony. The architects sought to reproduce this heavenly music in stone, creating a temple that resonates with the harmony of the universe. Modern research has confirmed that the proportions of Chartres Cathedral correspond to mathematical relationships found in living nature, from mollusk shells to galactic spirals. Medieval masters intuitively discovered universal laws that science now calls fractals and golden ratio constants. But the geometry of the cathedral holds even deeper secrets related to ancient traditions of measuring the earth and sky, which date back to the very origins of human civilization. Every square centimeter of Chartres Cathedral is covered with carvings, and each image carries symbolic meaning. More than 3,000 sculptures transform the temple into a giant stone encyclopedia, where Christian themes are intertwined with pagan symbols, and biblical characters coexist with ancient gods. But why did the Church allow such a mixture of the sacred and the secular? The western facade of the cathedral greets visitors with 3 monumental portals. The central one is dedicated to the Last Judgment, the northern one to the Ascension of Christ, and the southern one to the earthly life of the Savior. This 3-part composition symbolizes the past, present, and future, as well as the triune nature of the deity. But a careful look reveals details that go far beyond Orthodox Christianity. Among the traditional plant ornaments on the capitals of the columns, ancient pagan symbols are hidden. A green man with leaves instead of hair, a pre-Christian deity of nature, smiles from dozens of stone faces. Celtic knots are intertwined with Christian crosses, and Scandinavian runes stand side by side with Latin inscriptions. Images of zodiac signs and planetary gods occupy a special place in the cathedral's iconographic program. On the portal of the south transept, the 12 signs of the zodiac accompany images of the corresponding months of the year. But the zodiac is pagan astrology. How did such symbols find their way into a Christian church? Medieval theologians justified the presence of astrological symbols by saying that the stars were created by God and reflect His providence. The zodiacal cycle symbolized the divine plan of creation unfolding in time. Each sign corresponded to a specific stage of humanity's spiritual development from the fall to salvation. The archivolts of the portals are carved with images of the liberal arts: grammar, rhetoric, dialectics, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. These disciplines were considered steps toward the knowledge of divine truth. but next to them are figures in pointed hats, holding strange instruments. Who are these mysterious characters? Researchers identify these figures as medieval alchemists and magicians. Their attributes, retorts, alembics, astrolabes, reveal their affiliation with the occult sciences. The Church officially condemned alchemy, but the builders of Chartres included its adherents in the temple's decorative program. This suggests that there were supporters of esoteric teachings among the clergy. The capitals of the choir columns contain scenes that can be interpreted as alchemical allegories. Here, philosophers are depicted wearing crowns, bent over bowls containing mysterious substances. Birds peck at the fruits of the tree of knowledge, symbolizing the extraction of secret knowledge from matter. Lions devour the sun, a classic alchemical symbol of the dissolution of gold in royal water. On the south portal, among the traditional Christian saints, you can find images of ancient philosophers, Aristotle, Pythagoras, and Ptolemy. They are presented as precursors of Christian wisdom, but their attributes indicate a connection with the Hermetic sciences. Pythagoras holds tablets with numerical ratios. Ptolemy holds an astrolabe, and Aristotle holds a sphere with planetary orbits. The reliefs on the base depicting the months of the year are particularly noteworthy. Each month is represented by corresponding agricultural work, but the symbolism goes beyond a simple calendar. March is depicted as a warrior in armor. This is the planet Mars, which rules this month. May is shown as a blooming young man, the image of Venus. Astrological correspondences are hidden under the guise of a rural calendar. Inside the cathedral, the symbolic program becomes even more complex. The capitals of the nave columns depict scenes from the lives of the biblical patriarchs, but their composition follows the laws of alchemical iconography. Lot's transformation into a pillar of salt symbolizes the fixation of volatile substances. Abraham's sacrifice is an operation of separation. Biblical stories become a textbook of Hermetic art. The cathedral's choir loft has preserved 16th-century wooden sculptures that replaced earlier stone ones. Among the traditional saints, completely unexpected characters appear here: Egyptian gods, Indian sages, Arab philosophers. Renaissance masters openly included representatives of all religions and cultures in the Christian temple. The most mysterious is a group of reliefs on the outer wall of the south transept. They depict scenes that cannot be interpreted unambiguously. People in strange poses, holding geometric instruments and pointing at the stars. Some researchers see in them a depiction of a secret society of builders passing on esoteric knowledge through generations. The stone book of Chartres Cathedral contains information that we are only beginning to decipher. Each discovery raises new questions about who these medieval masters were and what knowledge they possessed. Long before the first Christian missionaries set foot on Gallic soil, the hill in Chartres was already considered a sacred place. Here, among the oak groves, the Druids, priests of the ancient Celts, performed their mysterious rituals and preserved the knowledge accumulated over millennia. But did this heritage disappear with the arrival of Christianity? Or does it live on in the stone of the Gothic cathedral? Archaeological excavations in the cathedral crypt have uncovered traces of a pre-Christian sanctuary dating back to the 1st century BC. Sacrificial altars with Celtic inscriptions dedicated to the mother goddesses, the matrons, were found here. These deities of fertility were revered throughout Gaul as the patronesses of women, children, and crops. It is no coincidence that the Christian church on this site is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The Roman author Pliny the Elder mentions that in the forests near Chartres, the Druids performed sacred ceremonies of cutting mistletoe with a golden sickle. Mistletoe, growing on oak trees, was considered a panacea for all diseases and a symbol of the immortality of the soul. Modern botanical research has confirmed the presence of ancient oak groves with an unusually high concentration of mistletoe in the vicinity of the cathedral. The Druidic tradition passed on knowledge exclusively orally through 20 years of training. Students memorized thousands of poems containing information about astronomy, medicine, jurisprudence, and the secret forces of nature. But when the Romans banned Druidism, where did this knowledge disappear to? Some researchers believe that it has been preserved in the symbolism of Christian churches. The layout of Chartres Cathedral is remarkably similar to descriptions of the sacred groves of the Druids. The central nave corresponds to the main avenue, the transept to the intersecting paths, and the choir to the inner sanctuary. The columns of the temple are arranged in the same way as the oak trees grew in the sacred groves, forming concentric circles around the central altar. The cathedral's ornamentation is dominated by plant motifs characteristic of Celtic art. Oak leaves, acorns, ivy, and grapevines intertwine in endless patterns symbolizing the eternal cycle of life and death. These same motifs are found on Celtic torques and bracelets found in the vicinity of Chartres. Of particular significance is the symbolism of the Tree of Life, which is often found in the cathedral's sculptural decoration. For the Druids, the oak was a sacred tree, connecting the underground world of the roots, the earthly world of the trunk, and the heavenly world of the crown. Christian craftsmen reinterpreted this symbol, transforming the pagan tree into the cross of Christ, but retaining its cosmological meaning. The calendar symbolism of the cathedral also goes back to Druidic traditions. The Celtic year was divided into 4 seasons, beginning on the days of the equinoxes and solstices. These dates are still celebrated with special services in Chartres, and the direction of the light rays in the temple changes in accordance with the ancient solar calendar. But the most striking discovery awaited researchers in the cathedral's underground crypt. Here, under the Christian altar, an ancient well 33 meters deep was discovered, exactly the number of years of Christ's earthly life. The Druids considered such wells to be entrances to the other world, places of communication with the spirits of ancestors and gods. According to local beliefs, the water from the well of the Holy Strong Ones has healing properties. Chemical analysis has shown a high mineral content, especially iron, which does indeed make this water beneficial to health. But did the Druids know about the healing properties of water, or were they guided by mystical considerations? The shape of the crypt repeats the layout of a Celtic underground sanctuary, a round room with niches around the perimeter. In these niches, the Druids placed images of gods and kept sacred objects. Christian builders preserved this layout, placing statues of saints and the relics of martyrs in the niches. The Druidic influence can also be traced in the musical traditions of Chartres. The Gregorian chants performed in the cathedral contain melodic phrases characteristic of ancient Celtic incantations. The pentatonic scales typical of Celtic music are organically woven into Christian hymns. The symbolism of numbers in the cathedral's architecture also goes back to Druidic beliefs. The number 7, sacred to the Celts, determines the number of naves, altars, and main columns. The number 9, the number of sacred groves in ancient Gaul, is repeated in the number of apses and chapels. Is this a coincidence or a conscious following of ancient tradition? Modern DNA research has shown that a significant part of the population of Chartres is of Celtic origin. The genetic memory of the people has preserved the connection with their ancient roots, and this connection is reflected in the architecture of the cathedral. The stones of the temple became the guardians of the wisdom that neither the Roman legions nor the church councils could destroy. In 1128, Pope Innocent II approved the charter of a mysterious knightly order that would forever change the history of medieval Europe. The Order of the Poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, known as the Templars, accumulated untold riches and secret knowledge during its 2 centuries of existence. But what did these warrior monks have to do with the construction of a peaceful cathedral in a provincial French town? The documents of the Chartres chapter contain numerous references to donations made by the Templars for the construction of the Gothic cathedral. In 1213, immediately after the fire that destroyed the Romanesque church, the Grand Master of the Order, Philippe de Plessis, personally arrived in Chartres and contributed a significant sum to the construction fund. But why did the militant order show such interest in a peaceful church? The Templars controlled the most important trade routes of medieval Europe, and Chartres was located at the crossroads of the roads from Paris to Spain and from Normandy to Burgundy. The order had its residence in the city, the commandery of Saint-Jean-en-Valais, the ruins of which still remain 5 kilometers from the cathedral. From here, the Templars controlled trade and pilgrimage in the region. But economic interests do not explain the order's special relationship with Chartres Cathedral. The Vatican archives contain a letter from Grand Master Jacques de Molay, written shortly before the order was destroyed in 1307. It mentions a certain great treasure kept in the house of the Mother of God in the land of the Carnutes. What treasure is being referred to? Gold or knowledge? Modern researchers point to the striking similarity between the architecture of Chartres Cathedral and the temples of Jerusalem. The proportions of the main nave correspond exactly to the dimensions of Solomon's temple, as described in the Bible. The height of the cathedral is equal to the height of the Jerusalem sanctuary, and the location of the altars repeats the layout of the Holy of Holies. Is this a coincidence, or the result of precise knowledge of sacred architecture? The Templars spent 9 years excavating under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, officially guarding the pilgrimage routes. During this time, they could have discovered ancient documents and artifacts related to Solomon's temple. Some researchers believe that these findings became the basis of the order's secret knowledge and the source of its power. In the sculptural decoration of Chartres Cathedral, one can find images that are difficult to explain from the point of view of official Christianity. The capitals of the columns are carved with scenes reminiscent of Templar initiation rituals, knights in white cloaks with red crosses bowing before mysterious symbols. Did the masters encode the secret rites of the order in stone? Particular attention is drawn to the image on the portal of the north transept. 2 knights on 1 horse, the official seal of the Knights Templar. This symbol meant poverty and brotherhood, but esoteric tradition sees in it a hint of the dual nature of the order: external, Christian, and internal, esoteric. The cathedral's stained glass windows feature strange geometric symbols, which some researchers associate with Templar symbolism. 8-pointed crosses, pentagrams, and intertwined triangles appear in the most unexpected places, among floral ornaments or in the folds of the saints' clothes. Are these secret signs, understandable only to the initiated? The Knights Templar were renowned for their knowledge of architecture and engineering. Their castles and churches were distinguished by innovative design solutions and perfect proportions. The same principles were applied in Chartres Cathedral, a revolutionary framework system, precise load calculations, and the use of mathematical proportions. Could the anonymous masters of the cathedral have been Templar architects? The order had extensive connections with Muslim scholars and Jewish thinkers. During the Crusades, the Templars often made truces with the Saracens and traded with them. This allowed them to become acquainted with the achievements of Arab science, algebra, trigonometry, optics. Many of the architectural innovations of Chartres Cathedral may have been borrowed from Islamic architecture through the Templars. In 1307, French King Philip the Fair destroyed the Templar order, accusing the knights of heresy and blasphemy. Grand Master Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake, and the order's property was confiscated. But many knights managed to escape, taking the archives and treasures with them. Some of these riches may have been hidden in the secret chambers of Chartres Cathedral. Legends speak of underground passages connecting the cathedral to the ruins of the Templar commandery. In the 19th century, during the restoration of the temple, walled-up passages leading in an unknown direction were indeed discovered. Exploration of these tunnels could shed light on the connection between the order and the cathedral, but church authorities have prohibited further excavations. Modern historians are increasingly coming to the conclusion that the Templars were not just a military order, but a secret society that preserved ancient esoteric knowledge. Their influence on the architecture of Gothic cathedrals, including Chartres, may have been much more significant than is commonly believed. But what exactly did the knight monks pass on to the cathedral builders, and where can we find traces of this transfer? In the shady alleys of medieval Chartres, where smoke from chimneys mingled with the aromas of herbs and metals, a special kind of craftsman worked. Officially, they were apothecaries, blacksmiths, and jewelers, but their true occupation was alchemy, the great art of transforming metals and discovering the secrets of nature. And traces of their activities are forever imprinted in the stone of the Gothic cathedral. Alchemy in the Middle Ages was not simply chemistry or the search for the philosopher's stone. It was a holistic teaching about the transformation of both matter and the human soul. Alchemists believed that by perfecting metals, they were simultaneously purifying their own spirits. Their laboratories were both workshops and temples where the mysteries of knowledge were performed. The stained glass windows of Chartres Cathedral, donated by craft guilds, reveal some surprising details. The window commissioned by pharmacists depicts not only medicinal plants, but also alchemical symbols, retorts, alembics, and furnaces for smelting metals. Next to the images of the patron saints of medicine are figures in pointed hats, bent over mysterious instruments. But why did the Church allow the depiction of heretical alchemical symbols in a sacred space? The answer lies in the dualistic attitude of medieval Christianity towards natural magic. While officially condemning black magic, the Church recognized the study of divine forces hidden in nature. Alchemy was considered legitimate if it served the knowledge of God's creation. Legend associates Chartres with the name of one of the greatest alchemists of the Middle Ages, Fulcanelli. This mysterious master, whose real name is unknown, wrote a book in the 20th century called The Secrets of Gothic Cathedrals, in which he claimed that Notre Dame de Chartres is a textbook of alchemy carved in stone. Every sculpture and every ornament contains encrypted formulas of the great work. According to Fulcanelli, the north portal of the cathedral depicts the various stages of the alchemical process. Scenes from the Old Testament are interpreted as allegories of chemical operations. The separation of light from darkness symbolizes the separation of elements. The flood symbolizes the dissolution of the primordial matter, and the exodus from Egypt symbolizes the purification of substances. Biblical history becomes the language of secret science. Alchemists paid particular attention to the symbolism of metals and planets. In medieval tradition, the 7 planets corresponded to 7 metals: the sun to gold, the moon to silver, Mars to iron, Venus to copper, Jupiter to tin, Saturn to lead, and Uranus to uranium tin, Saturn to lead, and Mercury to mercury. In the architecture of Chartres Cathedral, this symbolism is reflected in the number of naves, altars, and towers. The sacred number 7 is repeated everywhere. The color symbolism of the stained glass windows also corresponds to the alchemical tradition. Black represents the nigredo stage, the decay and death of the old form. White symbolizes albedo, purification and resurrection. Red corresponds to rubedo, final perfection, and the birth of the philosopher's stone. The sequence of colors in the cathedral windows follows the stages of the great work. On the capitals of the columns, you can find images that alchemists call the green lion, a symbol of the dissolving power capable of absorbing gold. Nearby are carved birds pecking at grapes, an allegory of distillation, the process of extracting fine substances from coarse matter. For the uninitiated, these are religious symbols. For adepts, they are a chemistry textbook. Alchemical tradition asserts that the philosopher's stone can only be created at a specific time and in a specific place. Astrological calculations must indicate the favorable moment when the planets are in the right positions. The orientation of Chartres Cathedral to the cardinal points and its connection to the solar calendar may have taken these requirements into account. An ancient well has been preserved in the crypt of the cathedral, the water from which, according to local beliefs, has miraculous properties. Alchemists believed that such water contained the primordial matter, the substance from which the philosopher's stone could be created. Is this why the sanctuary was founded here, and then the cathedral was built? Medieval alchemists often hid under the guise of simple craftsmen. A blacksmith working with metals naturally became an adept of metallurgical alchemy. A glassblower creating stained glass studied the properties of fire and the transformation of sand into a transparent material. Perhaps there were real alchemists among the builders of Chartres Cathedral who encrypted their knowledge in architecture. According to some sources, the Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, was initiated into the secrets of alchemy during the order's stay in the East. The Templars' connection with Chartres Cathedral may have included the transfer of alchemical knowledge to the builders of the temple. It is no coincidence that during the trial of the Templars, they were accused of worshipping the mysterious head of Baphomet, possibly an alchemical symbol of the union of opposites. Modern science confirms that medieval alchemists had a deep knowledge of chemistry, mineralogy, and metallurgy. Their magical operations were often quite rational chemical processes, clothed in mystical terminology. Perhaps the secrets of creating the Chartres blue and other unique technologies of the cathedral date back to the alchemical tradition. But alchemy was not only a science of matter, it was a doctrine of spiritual transformation of man. In this sense, Chartres Cathedral is truly an alchemical structure designed to transform a simple man into a being capable of perceiving divine light. When the sun reaches its highest point on the summer solstice, its rays pass through a specially cut opening in the south wall of Chartres Cathedral and fall precisely on a copper plate embedded in the floor of the nave. This light phenomenon has been repeated every year for 8 centuries, turning the Gothic temple into a giant sundial. But how did medieval builders achieve such astronomical precision? The cathedral is not oriented strictly from west to east, like most Christian churches, but with a slight deviation to the northeast. This feature was long considered a mistake by medieval craftsmen until research revealed its true cause. The altar is directed precisely at the point of sunrise on the feast day of September 8th, when the church celebrates the Nativity of the Virgin Mary. Such precision required deep astronomical knowledge and complex calculations. Medieval architects had to take into account the precession of the Earth's axis, the change in the sun's declination throughout the year, and the geographical latitude of Chartres. Where did the builders of the 13th century get this knowledge, when official science barely went beyond Ptolemy's geocentric system? The zodiac signs in the cathedral's stained glass windows are not just decorations, but an accurate astronomical calendar. The sign of Aries corresponds to the spring equinox, Cancer to the summer solstice, Libra to the autumn equinox, and Capricorn to the winter solstice. The position of these signs in the cathedral windows indicates the directions to the corresponding points on the horizon at the moments of astronomical events. The North Rose window contains a complex astrological program based on the system of horoscope houses. The 12 segments of the rose correspond to the 12 astrological houses that govern various spheres of human life. In the center of the composition is the figure of the Virgin Mary as a symbol of the Virgin Cosmocrator, who rules the destinies of the world. But the most amazing astronomical knowledge is encrypted in the proportions of the labyrinth. Its diameter is 12 meters and 94 centimeters, exactly 1,000th of the diameter of the Earth. Such accuracy is astonishing, considering that the dimensions of our planet were only calculated in the 17th century. How did medieval craftsmen know the true dimensions of the Earth? The path through the labyrinth is 261 meters long, which corresponds to 1/48th of the Earth's meridian. If you walk through the labyrinth 48 times, the distance covered will be equal to the length of the meridian from the equator to the pole. The labyrinth becomes a model of the Earth, and the pilgrim walking through it symbolically circles the entire planet. The cathedral's sculptural decor features images of constellations and planets, executed with remarkable astronomical accuracy. On the portal of the north transept, there is a carved map of the starry sky, corresponding to the position of the constellations at the time of the consecration of the temple. The constellation Virgo is placed in the center of the composition, which corresponds to the dedication of the cathedral to the Virgin Mary. Of particular interest is the image of the planet Venus in its various phases of visibility. One of the stained glass windows shows the 8-year cycle of Venus, which returns 5 times to the same point in the sky. This complex astronomical cycle was known to Babylonian astronomers, but how did it find its way into a 13th century Gothic cathedral? The acoustic properties of the cathedral are also related to astronomy. The resonance frequencies of the temple correspond to musical intervals, which, according to the Pythagorean tradition, reproduce the harmony of the planetary spheres. Singing in the cathedral literally recreates the music of the cosmos, turning the temple into an instrument for reproducing the heavenly symphony. The calendar images in the stained glass windows show not only agricultural work, but also the position of the stars in different months. These astronomical references allowed medieval people to determine the time by the stars and plan their agricultural work in accordance with cosmic rhythms. The library of the Chartres school, which existed at the cathedral, housed translations of Arabic astronomical treatises and Greek texts on mathematics. Scholars such as Thierry of Chartres and Bernard Silvestre worked here, creating a synthesis of Christian theology and ancient cosmology. Their ideas may have influenced the architectural design of the cathedral. Medieval builders used astronomical knowledge not only to orient the building, but also to determine the optimal time to begin construction. According to surviving documents, the foundation was laid on astrologically favorable days when the planets were in harmonious positions. Modern computer calculations have confirmed that many of the light effects in the cathedral were planned in advance by the architects. On certain days of the year, the sun's rays illuminate specific parts of the altar, creating a kind of light mystery. This transforms the cathedral into a huge astronomical instrument that allows the movement of the heavenly bodies to be tracked. The astronomical knowledge embedded in the architecture of Chartres Cathedral is far ahead of the official level of medieval science. Perhaps the builders had access to ancient knowledge preserved from antiquity or to Eastern sources brought by crusaders and merchants. In the complete silence of the Gothic cathedral, every rustle turns into a mysterious whisper, and the human voice acquires amazing power and beauty. Chartres Cathedral has unique acoustic properties that turn it into a giant musical instrument. But did medieval craftsmen create these effects by accident, or were they guided by precise acoustic calculations? The reverberation time in the cathedral is between 4 and 8 seconds, depending on the frequency of the sound. This means that every sound continues to resonate for several seconds after the source has fallen silent. These parameters are ideal for Gregorian chant, creating the effect of a continuous heavenly choir. The secret of acoustic perfection lies in the geometry of the cathedral. High arches, stone walls, and the absence of soft surfaces all create natural reverberation. But the main role is played by the proportions of the building, based on musical intervals. The ratio of the length of the nave to its width corresponds to a musical fourth, and the height to the width corresponds to a fifth. Medieval architects knew about the connection between geometry and music from the works of ancient authors. Boethius, in his treatise on music, described the mathematical foundations of harmony, and Vitruvius explained the principles of acoustics in ancient theaters. This knowledge was reinterpreted and applied in the construction of Gothic cathedrals. In the choir of the cathedral, there are special acoustic points where the voice acquires extraordinary power and clarity. These places are called sound foci and are located in strictly defined places, calculated according to the laws of geometric acoustics. The singers of the medieval choir knew these points and used them to create the maximum effect. Stone resonators built into the walls of the cathedral serve to naturally amplify certain frequencies. These hollow niches, often mistaken for decorative elements, are in fact acoustic devices tuned to the frequencies of the human voice. Their location and dimensions are calculated with mathematical precision. The acoustic connection between the labyrinth and the altar is of particular importance. Sound produced in the center of the labyrinth is reflected from the arches and concentrated in the altar area. This allowed pilgrims passing through the labyrinth to hear the service even when they were in the far part of the temple. Stained glass windows also affect the acoustics of the cathedral. Colored glass has different resonant properties than ordinary glass, which creates a special timbre. On sunny days, when light passes through the stained glass windows, the acoustics of the cathedral change, becoming warmer and more voluminous. Medieval music theory distinguished between 3 types of music: world music, the harmony of the heavenly spheres; human music, the harmony of the soul and body, and instrumental music created by human hands. The acoustics of Chartres Cathedral combine all three types, creating a space where earthly singing resonates with heavenly harmony. Gregorian chants performed in the cathedral use special modal scales that differ from the modern major-minor system. These scales, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, create a special spiritual mood and perfectly match the acoustic properties of the temple. Each mode is tuned to specific resonant frequencies of the building. Acoustic experiments have shown that at certain points in the cathedral, sounds whispered in other parts of the church can be heard. These acoustic corridors connect the altar with the crypt and the labyrinth with the choir, creating an invisible network of sound paths. Perhaps medieval priests used these effects to create the impression of mystical voices. The organ of Chartres Cathedral, installed in the 16th century, fits perfectly into the acoustic environment of the temple. Its pipes are tuned to the resonant frequencies of the building, and its location in the western part creates optimal sound distribution throughout the space. The sound of the organ in the cathedral creates the effect of music coming from the walls themselves. Modern research using computer modeling has shown that the acoustic properties of the cathedral change depending on the number of people inside. Human bodies absorb high frequencies, making the sound warmer. The architects took this factor into account by calculating the acoustics for a cathedral filled to capacity with worshippers. Some researchers believe that the acoustics of Gothic cathedrals have a psychophysiological effect on people. Low-frequency resonances can cause altered states of consciousness that contribute to religious ecstasy. Perhaps medieval craftsmen intuitively used these effects to enhance the spiritual impact of architecture. The acoustic space of Chartres Cathedral is a complex system where every element, from the shape of the arches to the arrangement of the columns, plays a role in creating a unique soundscape. This transforms the temple into an instrument for performing a cosmic symphony, where earthly voices merge with the music of the spheres. For 8 centuries, the roads of Europe led thousands upon thousands of pilgrims to Chartres. Kings and peasants, scholars and craftsmen, saints and sinners flocked here, drawn not only by Christian shrines, but also by the more ancient mysteries of this place. What were they looking for in a Gothic cathedral built on a pagan sanctuary? Pilgrimages to Chartres began long before the Gothic cathedral was built. As early as the 9th century, when Charles the Bald presented the temple with a veil of the Virgin Mary, the first pilgrims flocked here. But the sacred relic was only the official reason for the journey. The true goals of many pilgrims remained hidden. Among the famous visitors to the cathedral was King Louis I, who came here to pray for the birth of an heir and received what he asked for. English King Henry VI made a pilgrimage to Chartres as a sign of repentance for his participation in the 100 Years' War. But what attracted ordinary people who spent their last money on a long journey rather than royalty? Medieval chronicles describe a special type of pilgrim called Masters of the Road. These were people who possessed secret knowledge about sacred places and the routes between them. They served as guides for other pilgrims, but their main goal was to study the esoteric knowledge hidden in the architecture of temples. In Chartres, these initiates found particularly rich material for research. The cathedral's labyrinth became a center of attraction for a special category of visitors, those who sought spiritual enlightenment through a symbolic journey. Passing through the labyrinth on one's knees, with prayer and reflection, was equated with a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. But for the initiates, the labyrinth was not just a symbol, but an initiatory tool. In the Middle Ages, there were secret societies of pilgrims united by common esoteric knowledge. They used special signs and passwords to identify each other and had a network of secret shelters along the pilgrimage routes. Chartres was one of the most important centers of such societies, a place of initiation and transmission of secret knowledge. The Compostela Brotherhood, which managed pilgrimages to Santiago de Compostela, had its representative office in Chartres. Many pilgrims began their journey to the tomb of St. James from this very cathedral. The stained glass window dedicated to St. James depicts not only the path to Spain, but also the esoteric, starry path of spiritual perfection. Alchemists and adepts of the Hermetic sciences came to Chartres to study the stone book of esoteric symbols. They spent days and weeks deciphering the meaning of the sculptures, measuring the proportions of the building, and recording their observations in secret codes. Some of these records have survived to this day and still amaze us with the depth of their authors' knowledge. A special group was made up of pilgrims healers who came to the cathedral not only for spiritual, but also for physical healing. According to legend, the water from the sacred well in the crypt had miraculous properties. But healers studied more than just water. They explored the geomagnetic properties of the place, the influence of architecture on the human psyche, and the acoustic effects of singing and prayer. Medieval universities sent their best students to Chartres to study practical geometry. Officially, this meant learning construction skills, but in reality, students studied sacred geometry and its application in architecture. Many future architects of Gothic cathedrals received their first knowledge in Chartres. Female pilgrims were a special category of visitors to the cathedral. Many came here with fertility problems, seeking help from the Virgin Mary. But some of them were initiated into ancient female mysteries associated with the cult of the Great Mother, which existed in this place long before Christianity. Craftsmen from various guilds made corporate pilgrimages to Chartres, where they studied the secrets of craftsmanship encrypted in stained glass windows and sculptures. Bricklayers studied stoneworking techniques, glass blowers studied the secrets of stained glass creation, and blacksmiths studied metalworking techniques. For them, the cathedral was not only a temple, but also a textbook on the craft of art. Astrologers and astronomers came to Chartres to study the stone calendar laid out in the cathedral's architecture. They observed changes in the lighting of various parts of the temple throughout the year, compiled maps of light effects, and calculated astronomical constants. Many scientific discoveries of the Middle Ages were made as a result of such observations. Musicians and singers studied acoustic effects in the cathedral, experimented with resonance frequencies, and created new musical works that took into account the characteristics of the Gothic space. Some of the greatest examples of polyphonic music were created under the influence of the acoustics of Chartres Cathedral. Philosophers and theologians came here in search of a synthesis of various religious and philosophical traditions. In the symbolism of the cathedral, they found points of contact between Christianity, Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, and Islamic philosophy. The Chartres School of Theology became one of the centers of medieval religious syncretism. Doctors and healers studied the connection between architecture and human health in the cathedral. They observed how different parts of the temple affected people's physical and mental states, and which materials and forms contributed to healing. Many principles of architectural therapy were developed based on the experience of Chartres Cathedral. Secret societies of the Middle Ages used the cathedral as a place for meetings and initiations. Rosicrucians, alchemists, astrologers, and Kabbalists found like-minded people here and exchanged knowledge. The underground rooms of the cathedral served as secret halls for esoteric gatherings. Modern research shows that the flow of pilgrims to Chartres has never completely stopped. Even in times of religious wars, revolutions, and world wars, people continued to come here in search of answers to eternal questions. What is so special about this place that has attracted people for over 1,000 years? Perhaps the answer lies in a unique combination of factors: the geomagnetic properties of the place, the perfection of its architectural proportions, the richness of its symbolic content, and the continuity of its spiritual tradition. Chartres remains a living symbol of the human quest for higher truths, a place where the material and the spiritual merge into a single whole. In the 21st century, Chartres Cathedral attracts not only pilgrims and tourists, but also scientists from a wide variety of disciplines. Architects study the structural solutions of Gothic masters, physicists investigate acoustic and optical effects, and geologists analyze the properties of building stone. Modern science continues to uncover new secrets in this medieval temple, confirming the genius of its creators. Laser scanning conducted in 2010 made it possible to create an accurate three-dimensional model of the cathedral, with an error of less than 1 millimeter. Computer analysis showed that deviations from ideal geometry are no more than 2 centimeters over the entire length of the building. Such accuracy is astonishing, considering that the construction was carried out without modern measuring instruments. Georadar's studies of the foundation revealed a complex system of underground structures beneath the cathedral, extending far beyond the known crypt. Archaeologists have identified the remains of at least 5 earlier churches, as well as traces of pre-Christian buildings. The cathedral was indeed built on a site that had been considered sacred for millennia. Spectral analysis of stained glass confirmed the uniqueness of the Chartres blue. Nanoparticles of silver and gold were found in 13th century samples, creating a unique optical effect. Modern technology cannot accurately reproduce this medieval technique, which speaks to the supreme skill of ancient glassmakers. Acoustic measurements using digital equipment showed that the cathedral's resonance frequencies correspond to mathematical proportions based on the golden ratio. The reverberation time varies from 3 to 9 seconds depending on the frequency, creating ideal conditions for Gregorian chant. Medieval architects intuitively created an acoustically perfect space. Geophysical studies have revealed anomalous magnetic fields in the area around the cathedral. Magnetometric maps show a concentration of geomagnetic lines precisely where the altar is located. Perhaps the ancient builders really did sense the energetic characteristics of this place. Computer modeling of light effects confirmed that most of them were calculated in advance by the architects. On the days of the equinoxes and solstices, the sun's rays fall on strictly defined elements of the interior, creating light mysteries. The cathedral functions as a giant astronomical instrument. Chemical analysis of the mortar revealed the use of unusual additives: ash from certain plants, crushed shells, even human hair. These components gave the mortar special strength and plasticity. Medieval builders knew secrets that modern chemistry is only beginning to understand. Thermal imaging studies have revealed hidden voids in the cathedral walls, which may be secret chambers or structural elements. Some of these cavities have a regular geometric shape, which rules out accidental origin. Perhaps the cathedral walls really do conceal hiding places with ancient relics or documents. Dendrochronological analysis of the wooden structural elements showed that the wood for construction was harvested at a specific time of year. and seasoned using a special technology. The age of the oak trees used for the rafters ranged from 150 to 200 years. Medieval craftsmen understood the importance of quality materials for the durability of the structure. Microbiological studies of the stone revealed special types of bacteria on the surface of the sculptures that protect the limestone from destruction. These microorganisms create a thin protective film that protects the carvings from erosion. Nature itself has become the guardian of medieval art. Radiocarbon analysis of organic inclusions in the mortar made it possible to refine the dating of various parts of the cathedral. It turned out that the construction was carried out with surprising speed. The main part of the building was erected in just 25 years. Such a pace of construction required exceptional organization of work and highly skilled craftsmen. Mathematical analysis of the cathedral's proportions using computer programs confirmed the use of complex geometric ratios. Fractal structures were discovered in the building's layout, which are repeated at different scale levels. Medieval architects intuitively applied principles that modern science calls fractal geometry. Modern research not only confirms the genius of medieval craftsmen, but also raises new questions. How did 13th century builders achieve such perfection in various fields of knowledge? Where did they get the technology that in some cases surpasses modern capabilities? Each new discovery deepens the mystery of Chartres Cathedral. 8 centuries of research, hundreds of scientific papers, thousands of hours spent studying every detail. And yet, Chartres Cathedral continues to hold secrets that baffle even the most experienced scientists. The deeper we delve into the study of this Gothic masterpiece, the more questions arise that have no answers. The main mystery of the cathedral is the identity of its architect. In the Middle Ages, masters rarely signed their works, considering themselves merely instruments in the hands of the Almighty. But Chartres Cathedral is so perfect that it was clearly created by a genius. Who was this person? Where did he study? Where did he get his knowledge, which was centuries ahead of its time? The documents of the Chartres chapter do not contain the name of the chief architect. Only individual craftsmen are mentioned: Robert de Luzarc, Thomas de Cormont, and Renaud de Cormont. But it is unclear which of them was in charge of the overall project and which were responsible for individual parts. Perhaps the true creator of the cathedral deliberately concealed his name, knowing that his knowledge could be considered heretical. The sources of funding for the construction also remain a mystery. Official donations, even the most generous ones, could not cover all the costs of such a grandiose structure. Where did the additional funds come from? Were there secret societies or orders with untold wealth behind the project? The speed of construction amazes modern experts. It seems impossible to erect such a complex structure in 26 years, using only manual labor and the simplest mechanisms. How was it possible to organize the work of thousands of craftsmen so that all the details fit together perfectly? The origin of some technologies remains unclear. The Chartres blue has not yet been reproduced using modern methods. The acoustic properties of the cathedral require complex calculations, which in the 13th century were done without computers. Where did medieval craftsmen get this knowledge? The symbolic program of the cathedral contains elements that are difficult to explain from the point of view of Orthodox Christianity. Pagan gods, alchemical symbols, astrological signs, all this must have shocked the medieval clergy. Why did the Church allow such a mixture of the sacred and the secular? The geometric proportions of the labyrinth contain knowledge about the size of the earth that was only officially obtained in modern times. The diameter of the labyrinth is 1/1000th of the diameter of the planet, accurate to within a centimeter. Where did the builders of the 13th century get such accurate astronomical data? The orientation of the cathedral takes into account the precession of the Earth's axis, a phenomenon that was described only in antiquity by Hipparchus and rediscovered during the Renaissance. The altar is directed towards the point of sunrise on the feast day, taking into account the change in this point over the centuries. How did medieval architects calculate such complex astronomical parameters? The underground structures beneath the cathedral have only been partially explored. Ground-penetrating radar surveys show the presence of extensive cavities and tunnels that may extend for kilometers from the building. What is hidden in these underground chambers? Why is access to them restricted even for scientists? The acoustic properties of the cathedral change depending on the time of day and season. At certain moments, sounds of unknown origin can be heard in the temple. Quiet melodies that cannot be explained by the wind or the expansion of stone. Are these phenomena the result of physical effects unknown to us? Many visitors to the cathedral describe unusual sensations, changes in the perception of time, visual effects, trance-like states. Scientists attribute this to infrasonic vibrations, but the exact cause has not been established. Did medieval craftsmen deliberately design these effects? The connection between the cathedral and other Gothic churches also remains a mystery. The distances between Chartres, Amiens, and Reims form regular geometric figures, and their orientation is linked to astronomical phenomena. Could the entire system of Gothic cathedrals in France be a single sacred complex? The disappearance of construction drawings and documents gives pause for thought. Such important materials could not have been lost by accident. Were they deliberately destroyed or hidden by people who knew their true value? The fate of the masters after the completion of construction is unknown. They seem to have disappeared into history, leaving no trace of their further activities. Where did the bearers of unique knowledge disappear to? Did they pass on their secrets to their successors? Each new attempt to unravel the mysteries of Chartres Cathedral leads to even greater enigmas. Perhaps this is the true purpose of the temple, not to provide definitive answers, but to stimulate the eternal search for truth. The cathedral remains a living mystery that will occupy the minds of researchers for many centuries to come. But perhaps some questions should not be answered. Perhaps the mystery is the main treasure of Chartres Cathedral, its eternal gift to humanity. Chartres Cathedral is not a museum exhibit frozen in medieval forms. It is a living organism that continues to evolve, influence people, and inspire new generations of creators. In the 21st century, the Gothic temple remains a source of discoveries, insights, and spiritual quests. Contemporary architects study Chartres' structural solutions and apply them in new projects. The principles of the Gothic framework system formed the basis for skyscrapers and modern public buildings. Le Corbusier called Gothic cathedrals the precursors of modern architecture, and Antonio Gaudi drew inspiration from them to create the Sagrada Familia. The acoustic properties of the cathedral are studied by modern sound engineers and composers. Classical and sacred music albums are recorded in the cathedral, and experiments with spatial sound are conducted there. The acoustics of Chartres have inspired the creation of new concert halls and recording studios around the world. The restoration work being carried out in the cathedral is becoming a school for craftsmen of various specialties. Bricklayers are studying medieval limestone processing techniques. stained glass artists are mastering the secrets of colored glass, and metallurgists are researching ancient forging methods. Chartres is turning into a living laboratory of traditional crafts. Pilgrimages to the cathedral are experiencing a new boom. Every year, more than 1 million visitors from all over the world come here. Among them are not only Christians, but also representatives of other religions, atheists, scientists, and artists. Everyone finds something of their own in Chartres: beauty, peace, inspiration, answers to eternal questions. The International Stained Glass Center, established in Chartres, has become a leading educational institution in the field of glass art. Masters from all continents study here, learning both ancient technologies and modern methods of working with glass. The traditions of medieval stained glass artists live on and develop in the work of new generations. The cathedral remains the subject of intensive scientific research. Each year brings new discoveries, from archaeological finds to physical phenomena. International symposiums and conferences bring leading experts in Gothic architecture, medieval studies, and art history to Chartres. Digital technologies open up new opportunities for studying and promoting the cathedral's heritage. Virtual tours allow people from all over the world to visit the temple without leaving their homes. Augmented reality helps to see what the cathedral looked like in different eras. And artificial intelligence analyzes the hidden patterns in its architecture. Artists, writers, and filmmakers continue to draw inspiration from the image of the Gothic cathedral. From Victor Hugo's novels to contemporary films, from pre-Raphaelite paintings to computer graphics, Chartres remains an inexhaustible source of creative ideas. The cathedral's environmental programs show the way to sustainable development. Medieval construction and energy-saving technologies are studied as an alternative to modern approaches. The cathedral, which has stood for 8 centuries, proves the advantages of durable architecture over disposable buildings. Educational programs attract students and school children to Chartres. Here they study history, mathematics, physics, and art history using real-life examples. The cathedral becomes a 3-dimensional textbook where abstract knowledge takes on concrete form. Interfaith dialogue finds fertile ground in Chartres. The symbolic richness of the cathedral, which includes elements of different traditions, promotes understanding between representatives of different faiths. The temple serves as a bridge between cultures and religions. 21st century restorers face unique challenges. Air pollution, acid rain, and climate change threaten the stonework and stained glass windows. New methods of protection and conservation are being developed to preserve the cathedral for future generations. Chartres Cathedral remains a mystery that stimulates human curiosity. Each new generation finds its own secrets and discoveries in it. Perhaps this is the true immortality of great works of art: the ability to generate new questions and inspire the search for answers. In a world where technology changes daily and information becomes obsolete in minutes, Chartres Cathedral reminds us of values that are timeless: beauty, harmony, the pursuit of perfection, and spiritual quest. It continues to teach us that true art not only reflects an era, but also shapes it, not only follows the times, but also leads them.